Hi, this is Dr. Nick. I'm the incrementalist here with incremental insights for better business, better health.
And I'm Fred Goldstein with Accountable Health, here helping companies consider their employee benefits packages and how to keep their employees healthy, both with COVID and as we move past COVID into the newer phases. So, one of the new things about the newer phase, Nick, we got some new regs or new thoughts from the CDC regarding travel and vaccines. So, what's up?
Well, it was inevitable that there was going to be new guidance around this once we start to see vaccinations. And to be clear, that the vaccination rate is inequitable around both the country, the United States, and the world. We have, widely varied. We've got countries that have done well, others not, access and so forth. So this is going to be a difficult, challenging rollout. And obviously for those folks that don't have access to it, it's going to create some challenges. But we're seeing a wide pickup, or at least at this point, we're starting to approach vaccine availability exceeds the demand. Sadly, I think some of that is because there's some vaccine hesitation, which we've talked about. We're not going to talk about today, but hopefully people will see the light and access this. But it's changed the way that we can travel. So the CDC's come out with a recommendation, not really surprising in my mind. If you've been vaccinated, you don't have to test before you go traveling. You don't have to test when you arrive for traveling. And you don't need to quarantine when you go or arrive back. But that doesn't apply everywhere because local rules supplant that, and local rules that's even within the US. So I can't say for certainty. I haven't looked at Hawaii, but they may well say, we're not playing, because they did that throughout the pandemic and the prior experience. And certainly from a country perspective, that's not true. So unfortunately, what that means is if you travel to, let's say, England, there is a pretty solid quarantine requirement. If you go to Australia, it's even harder quarantine. You've got to go into a specific hotel, pay some pretty significant money for that. The good news is when you come back to the US, if you've been vaccinated, they'll accept that, I think, assuming that the states accept that. So I think it's going to open up travel. You still have to wear protective masks. So need to carry on doing all the things that we do because other people may not be vaccinated, and we're still trying to suppress the virus. But it does sort of open things up, and we've seen an increase in travel. We've now got flights being canceled because there were not enough pilots. Hundreds of flights over the weekend for Delta. I think we're seeing the same with United. So we're going to see a pickup, certainly domestically.
So, that raises two interesting thoughts, Nick. One is obviously we're learning more. The vaccines must be good, right? They're working.
Yes, they are.
So, so that's great news. They've expanded. You're vaccinated. Hey, you can travel this way. And the second is that's really a positive incentive for individuals to get vaccinated, right? We all want to go back to doing many of the things we haven't been able to do, whether it's me to go visit my mom in California, etc. So this is some really good news from that perspective too, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a carrot in this particular instance. Obviously, if you're not vaccinated, you're going to have to follow the existing regulations. And, pretty much for the time being, we're looking at quarantine requirements when you arrive in somewhere new. You're looking at quarantine requirements when you come back, and also testing requirements, certainly. So I think, a great way to encourage vaccination. And you're absolutely right. Vaccines are working. We've seen some really good data on the double dose or the two-dose versions, that you get actually pretty good immune response after the first dose. So the second dose is really, just giving you even better immunity, which is fantastic news. And I think you've had some experiences, right?
Absolutely. So, in fact, yesterday I went to the state site for my second dose of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. And, very nervous about what's the next day going to be like because it's so varied for individuals. And that's what's been fascinating to watch is how some people really react strongly. Last night, I don't know if it was psychosomatic or what, but I was a little bit nauseous, kind of tossing and turning, but haven't really had a fever or anything. So sometimes it makes me a little nervous because I'd like to know I got a really strong response, and I haven't seen that yet. I'm on that 24-hour period. It was actually exactly 10 a.m. yesterday morning when I got my shot. Or actually 9, so it's been 24 hours. So it's going to be interesting to watch. Now, what I'm trying to figure out now too is how do we ultimately track that? I put my card in a safe place, but I'm looking around. I've made sure I have a PDF scan of that document just in case I lose it. But there's going to have to be some way to allow us to track that without having to carry around that card. And I know there are questions about whether to laminate it or not. You may need a booster and those kinds of things. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. But we are beginning to consider now, and those CDC recommendations just came out, are good news for us. How do we travel to potentially see some of my family, all of whom should be vaccinated very quickly?
Yeah, so let's talk about a couple of things there. So from an immune response, I think, it's fascinating. Here you are going, well, I didn't get a fever and stuff, but now I'm going, well, maybe I didn't get an immune response. Don't think that's true. I think widely varied. Much depends on your immune response and the way that it's sort of triggered, and perhaps, some of the other exposures that you've had potentially to other coronaviruses in your past. One of the reasons that you may not see it in older generations is maybe they've seen some of this and they're not getting the same massive response because this is not new. That's not scientific fact. I don't have, this is just me sort of conceptually thinking about it. But it's fascinating. You'll go, well, I missed out. I didn't have that. But it's good news. When it comes to the vaccine passports, I think so here's my suggestion. Take your handy dandy scanner, scan that puppy, both sides, and then reprint it at credit card size. I even know what that size is because I've gone through this process. So you minimize it to that size, then laminate it. So you don't laminate the original. I think the question is whether you should or you shouldn't. And then you've got a laminated copy that's just a little bit smaller. They seem to come in varied sizes based on what I've seen. And you can carry that around. I think we're going to see it with the passports, the digital versions of this. But, you want to have it. And hey, you need it to take it to Krispy Kreme if you're going to get your donut. You want to have that handy if you happen to drive past one.
Thanks for reminding me of that. There's one down the road. I might have to go hit that today. Yeehaw! Right. But as Dr. Wen said, maybe every day is not such a good idea. But I do think these positive incentives, understanding that there are activities you'll be able to do, is really good news for people. And hopefully it allows others to say, well, I really should consider this vaccine. It may be right for me to do that. So once again, Nick, another great week. This is Fred Goldstein with Accountable Health. Thanks so much for listening to us. If you have any questions or you'd like to reach out to us, please go hit the website. And I'll turn it back over to you, Nick.
And this is Dr. Nick. I'm the incrementalist here with Incremental Insights for better business, better health.